Hey, I'm Pete the Duck, and this is Forge with Pete, episode 13, Z-Fighting. Z-Fighting is a team-based objective map and game type I built using Dominion, and I've had a lot of positive feedback on it, so I wanted to share it with you all, even though it doesn't necessarily have some interesting or complex Forge mechanism at its heart. It's pretty traditional from a Forge perspective, even for having unorthodox gameplay. But it will let me talk about Dominion a little bit, so I hope you guys will find that helpful. But before we get to that, let's find out how to play. Z-Fighting, as the name implies, is based on the concept of fighting on the Z-axis. I wanted to create a game where the battlefield was completely flat, but conceptually that could become boring pretty quickly. So I used the Dominion barricades to dynamically change the battlefield as the game progresses. As bases are fortified, these barricades rise up and provide valuable cover from turrets and auto sentries. The game is Dominion, so your ultimate goal is to accumulate enough points to win by capturing and holding the 4 bases present on the map. It can be a lot of fun, so I hope you enjoy playing on Z-Fighting. But before you go, let's take a moment to jump into Forge and talk about the map and the Dominion game type. Okay, so here we are in Forge, and the map is nice and flat thanks to the bottom of the station T's. I've actually flipped these upside down so that I could use their bottom to create the surface of the map. It makes this nice flat platform. You can see I've used nothing but station T's for the white area of the map, and then for the bases I've used a central floor cap with a Coliseum wall underneath them just to visually define those spaces a little bit. As far as the Dominion objects, I didn't use very many. There are a lot of objects under the Dominion category, but I just wanted to use the ones that would work for this map. So I've used the barricades, the line upgrades and the corner barricades, and the winged upgrade barricades. So I've used a couple different barricade pieces. I've used the vehicle pads for the mongoose. I've used the turrets. And of course I have the capture point for the bases, and I'll get to that in just a second. But there are a lot of objects under Dominion, like turret status monitors and base shields. I didn't use any of those. Those are available to you. But for this map, I just wanted to keep it nice and simple and clean, and that's why I avoided those pieces. Now, I've set up the bases using capture plates. And that's, again, because I wanted this to be a flat battlefield. I didn't want this base terminal sticking up out of the ground, so I used the capture plate because you can actually walk through a capture plate. It's not going to cause any problems during the game by sticking up out of the ground and having players have to walk around it or anything like that. But I set it up just like you would a base terminal by giving it the DOM base game type label and a spawn sequence. This is base number 2, so the turret and the barricades all in this base, they all have a spawn sequence of 2 as well. So that's how I set up the capture points of the base using capture plates. You could use just a hill. You don't even need to use a capture plate. You could use anything you want, but that's specifically why I chose those. That's really all there is to this map. I'd have different bases set up using different spawn sequences. But since we're talking about Dominion, let's go ahead and run through some of the different objects that you can use in the Dominion palette. Now, you're going to start off for a Dominion base, you use a base terminal. In this map, I used a capture plate, but the intended object for Dominion is a base terminal. That's what everyone is generally going to recognize if you're making a map. So you can have up to 6 base terminals, generally for 6 bases, and you need to identify each base with a spawn sequence, say 1 through 6. So let's go ahead and make this base 1. You'll want to put game specific to true, and that's going to make this object only spawn in Dominion. For this map, because I only intended Dominion to be played on it, that wasn't important. But if you're making a traditional multiplayer map, you want to make sure that you put your Dominion objects to game specific. And of course, there's a lot of objects for Dominion, and there are a lot of game type labels, but it's not that bad because in general, there's going to be 1 game type label per Dominion object. So it's really easy to set up. So for the base terminal, you're going to make it a DOM base. And when you move over here to a turret, instead of making it DOM base, you're going to make it a DOM turret. So for each Dominion object, there's a corresponding game type label. Now, of course, if I want this turret to function for the base, I need to set it to the same spawn sequence. So let me just run through the rest of these objects. So for a base shield, you'll need to give it the DOM shield game type label. For a vehicle pad, you'll need to give it the DOM VPad label. For a barricade, DOM fortify. For the base stripes, DOM decor. For a base monitor, DOM screen. For the large monitor, you're going to need to use the DOM big screen label. And for the turret monitors, you're going to use DOM screen again. For the antennas, you're going to need DOM fortify. And that's just a quick run through of the different game type labels that you need to make these objects function when you're using them for Dominion. But the cool thing is, a lot of these objects actually work outside of Dominion. So for example, if I have a Team Slayer game, and I want to use a turret in it, I can do that. Even though it's Team Slayer and not Dominion, I can still use it under a couple constraints. The first is it must be a team game type. So it works for Team Slayer, but not Free-for-All Slayer. The other constraint is that you must wait until the hologram appears on the turret. It won't be available right at the beginning of the game. And the last constraint is you have to assign it to the appropriate team. See, right now I'm on blue team, so if I set this to attacker, which is blue team, if this was a Team Slayer game and I was on blue team and this hologram had appeared, I would be able to run up and build this turret during the game and have it function and shoot at enemy players, even though it wasn't a Dominion game. So it's pretty cool that you can use these objects outside of Dominion. And the same thing applies to vehicle pads. If I was going to use this vehicle pad and I wanted to use it in, say, a team oddball game, I could do the same thing. I set it to the appropriate team, and then any players that are on that team, once the hologram appeared, they would be able to come over here and acquire the vehicle during the game. So it's pretty cool that you can use these objects outside of Dominion. They're pretty useful in a lot of different ways. For the base shields, they would work in other game types. So for example, the neutral one, no players can pass through. Of course, you can break it. And since I'm on blue team, I can't go through the red one, but since I'm on blue team, I can go through the blue one. It's just kind of a cool thing to be able to use these objects in different ways, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that here while we were talking about Z-Fighting. So that's it. To download the map, you'll need to go to the file browser from Halo 4's main menu, select map variant, and do a file share search for my gamertag, Pete the Duck. The map is called Z-Fighting, and you're going to need the game type as well. So once you get the map, you'll want to back out, select game type, and do another file share search for Pete the Duck. The game type is also called Z-Fighting. Thanks for watching.